today I really wanted to. So I think the reason why I connected with you was for the women, the money, because it is so hard being female
Mm.
and not only being successful, but if you've gone through any kind of trauma or any kind of abuse when you're younger or any kind of control, then it's a much harder to have this mindset of I'm allowed to be successful, I'm allowed to earn money, I'm allowed to be out on my own. I don't have to just do what my partner tells me to. Um, so I kind of want to start there somewhere
Yeah.
in that. So I've got a cat who I think has just found her pretend mousy and she's meowing if you can
No,
hear
that's
her.
all right. I can't hear it, so that's all right.
I kind of wanted to start there of
Yeah.
what was your journey prior to being financially successful? Where were you? Let's start there.
So, sure. Initially, so like I grew up in a heavily religious home. So I came from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My dad was a bishop. I got married, the whole tick the boxes type thing, had the kids. It was abusive, so I left him and ended up homeless with my older two kids, who are both neurodiverse as well. So I was, for me, basically, I guess, at rock bottom because after I left him, and then I did find somewhere, got robbed of everything, including my underwear. So like we had nothing. I was starting from scratch. I managed to, through court, get approval to move basically back to where the state my parents are in, so the ACT, Canberra. And there I was able to start over. But during this time, I had started blogging in my marriage because I realized I was really unhappy. And the only way that I was going to get out of this was, if I started finding some way to sort of, I guess, financially support myself and change my life myself. But it was really difficult because of the, I guess, religious conditioning from my upbringing and the expectations of being a stay-at-home mom and, constantly in my head. Even now, at times, I catch myself. Sometimes it's no other success can compensate for failure in the home. So, like, I can't remember who said it, but I just remember that being drilled into my head constantly. And so, the idea of divorce or failure in that sense was just not an option. But staying in that marriage wasn't an option either. And so, sort of, I guess, learning more about myself and developing some confidence in that with the blogging and writing that I had started doing towards the end of the marriage. I actually was a finalist for an award and spoke at a conference in the States. And that's what gave me the confidence when I got back. A few months later, something else happened in the marriage and I just went, I am done, because there was this whole world out there and this whole community that would support me. And it didn't matter anymore. Like, I needed to do what was right for my kids and I. And by making those choices, finances kind of followed. Like, it was a difficult road in the beginning, but the more I worked on, I guess, unconditioning what I'd learned and that sort of stuff, the easier it was to make money. And then, once I got back to Canberra, because it's a very government city, what I was doing with the blogging and all of that, I had a lot of government agencies and international companies and that reaching out to me, asking me to work with them and do more. So I founded a company and it just kind of went from there. It was, but it took a lot of work between like deciding to leaving the marriage and that point. It was a short period of time, but it was a lot of work I put into, I guess, changing my mentality. Yeah.
So then let's talk about that.
Sure.
What did you think about money before?
It was very much, I think, that you, like, rich people are greedy and that, the wealthy people only look after themselves and that you should give away a lot of your money. Not just like we had to pay 10% tithing, but on top of that, there was a lot of like self-sacrifice. So I guess I didn't really believe that I could have much. And I think also I felt like I should give a lot away. And that happened at the beginning of my company as well. Like, I was doing a lot of charity work, which I don't regret at all. But I realized at one point I was doing too much of that and not enough profit work. But there was a lot of beliefs around I wasn't worthy of money for quite a while. And also just that I couldn't earn it because I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mum. So my mum, like growing up, she actually passed away when I was 15, but she was a stay-at-home mum and she did little bits and pieces. sort of from home. And I reckon had she been alive now, she would have done a lot of little like side hustles and that sort of thing that's like available now. But also growing up, it was always told about my grandmother, who's actually my dad's mum, could earn more than my grandfather. So my grandfather was a factory worker. My grandmother was like receptionist, typist, office lady. But she only worked when they were going to go on a holiday or something like that, because women should be at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after he passed away, like she was quite lost. That was in their 60s. And she went on to do a lot of work around widowhood and that sort of thing. But like that was the example. That's what was sort of drummed into me. So it's like, you as a woman shouldn't really be working. You should be in the home. And if you're not doing the right things in the home, then you're worthless. And so money doesn't matter. Money shouldn't be the focus and all this sort of stuff. But realistically, after I guess working on myself a lot, the more money I have, the more I can do for others anyway. So even with those sort of beliefs, I'm much more effective, in a better financial position. The stress is a whole lot less because you don't have to worry about your bills, and that flow on effect with my kids and stuff, like just everything in your life is easier when, like you've got a hold of money and you know what you're doing, and you don't, sort of have those real scarcity mindset type beliefs, I guess. Yeah.
So how did you unravel those beliefs? Because when they're anchored in, they really dictate your actions. Like they
Oh,
really dictate your actions. And to push against them, the resistance that you
oh yeah.
feel inside, how did you get around that or change it?
I would say I haven't completely. I
Mm-hmm.
have in a lot of ways, and I think logically in a lot of ways. But when I have my down moments, there's still that doubt that creeps in every now and then. But initially, I set a goal to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. So I
Mm-hmm.
was in my 20s. I was married. Well, I got married at 19, but like, I was mid 20s when I set this goal, and was focused on sort of like real estate and that sort of thing. And I guess the idea of that was just that would make us comfortable and all of that. And then I started learning more about money and associating with more people um, who had money or were writing about finance, and started speaking at these conferences and those sorts of things. And I guess exposing myself to other people and communicating with other people and networking and learning from them helped a lot. And then I started to read a lot more. I had read a few finance books previously, like The Richest Man in Babylon and Rich Dad Poor Dad, and all those, like The Millionaire
Mm-hmm.
Next Door, the list from like
Mm-hmm.
that era. Like I'm almost 40, so like back when I was like 13, these were all the books that my dad had. And so we read them, but of course everything was supposed to come from the Bible as well. Like that was a big focus. But I think branching out and learning from other people helped change my perspective a lot and see that there's different opportunities out there. But I don't think it fully changed until probably around 5 years ago. So I had done a lot of work, including like with meditation, visualization. I can't speak. Like tapping, like EFT and all those sorts of things. I did a bit of therapy. I basically tried everything. So I, at one point, actually went through and I was going to write this book about people that had gone from homeless to successful in some way. And I interviewed a bunch of them, and everything that they talked about, I decided to try. So like Reiki, hypnotherapy, NLP, like just everything. Kinesiology, all this sort of stuff. So combined with, because I had founded a company, I was now networking with a lot of CEOs and politicians and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I guess I learned a lot through them, both good and bad, because like you really pick up the vibe in those sorts of circumstances of what people are really like and what you would like to apply to your life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's sort of, I guess, grabbing knowledge from everywhere that I could. And then it was after that I had a period of time where nothing was happening with my custody case. So like going back a little bit, when I left him in 2012, my abusive ex, there was a protection order put in place, but it took until 2019 to finally be granted custody, and it was a whole mess. But at one point, we waited nearly 2 years for a court date.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I had a lot of time to, I guess, not stress so much about having to pay for court And so I kind of stepped back from work stuff a little and really went deeper within myself, and what I needed and my health and my mindset and that sort of stuff, and started doing a lot of work around that and following a lot of people on social media that were sort of, I guess, money mentors or mindset coaches and that. I didn't actually pay for any courses. I just absorbed the content, which, yeah, I'm one of those people. But I'm okay with that too. And I'm okay
I
with
am as well. I'm not a fan of, there's so much information out there
this
that
is
I look and
it.
I go, why would you pay for this stuff? I used to,
Yeah.
but then at some point I ran out of money and, like you, became homeless and just went,
Yeah.
I don't have any money. So
No.
I need to pull on my resources.
Yeah.
And how can I figure this stuff out
That's it.
without paying for it? And then
Yeah.
it really is just absorbing every YouTube video there
That's
was.
it.
Back then it was MP3, so YouTube
Yeah.
wasn't really a thing back then when I started doing this work.
Yeah.
No one, I mean, YouTube didn't exist until, I don't know, what was it, 10 years ago or something?
I know this
10,
blows my
15 years
kids'
ago?
minds
Uh,
that we did this without. They're like, what? I was like, you just,
podcasts have only been out for maybe
this is it.
five
Like
years or
a
eight
lot of
years
the
or
stuff we
something.
use now isn't that old.
No,
Like
TikTok's
it's
not that
not.
old.
No.
Instagram's not old. These are
Mhm.
within the last 10 years that they've
Yep.
just started coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. These are tools we've had to learn after I left my ex and after I started all that sort of work. Yeah. It was like quickly learn all these things. But
Yeah.
yeah, you learn it from where you could, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And I think one of the big things is action. So I think we tend to learn, or read or whatever, or make plans and that, and action can sometimes be lacking. And I think that's the space that I was in for a bit until I had that time where I could actually think and focus on myself. I think I had been just absorbing all the information, but not actually applying too much. Or like there was a period that I did apply a lot and experimented in that. And then it was a couple of years later that I did a whole lot more. And I had like a full year basically of focusing on myself and what I wanted and trying different things and, yeah, implementing that different stuff that we had learned everywhere. But yeah, I would say it would probably be a whole lot easier now because, yeah, all the resources and tools that are here now compared to,
So many amazing shows out there with just incredible content.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love it. Like I see what my teenagers are learning compared to what I had available. And
Yeah.
it's awesome. And they ask me too, they're like, oh, what podcast should I listen to? Or who are you following? Or is there anybody that you've seen? And like, we'll have often have like YouTube or podcasts or whatever on in the background or in the car, and have for years. So whilst I was learning, they were learning too. And we
Yeah.
kind of, did a lot of this stuff together, and they've done a lot of the stuff I was doing, they did as well, because obviously it was traumatic for them, the marriage, like to their father and leaving and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that's another thing, having, I guess, a little team, so to speak, that we're doing all of this stuff together in different ways, helped a lot. But yeah, I think the action sometimes is where we get stuck. We get all the resources, but then we don't experiment or apply anything or try and see what works for us and what doesn't. And I think having that period of time to be able to do that made a huge difference, and that's what actually shifted a lot. But yeah.
I do know for me, with the action, it's kind of very much the stories of the easiest one. Who do you think you are? Like, you're no one. No one's going to listen to you. No one's going to follow you. Who on earth do you think you are to think that you could earn money outside of a job?
Yeah.
Because my whole upbringing was, you go to school, you go to university, you get a degree, you get a job, you stay in that job for your entire life, and then you retire, and then you get sick, and then you die.
Yeah.
That's what I saw my parents do.
Oh yeah, same.
And my sister's kind of doing the same thing, same job, same house. Like when she bought a property, and I talked to my mum about it when she was alive, and I said, oh, so how long do you think she'll stay in this one? And she said, what are you talking about? This will now be her home. Like she will live in this home for her entire life. And here's me, who, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I moved 7 times when I was pregnant. And my daughter's 8. And this now, I think this is like the 7th or 8th house she's lived in, and she's 8.
Yeah.
And I look at it and go, this is so weird, because I only know my dad living in 2 houses.
Mm.
I only know my mum living in 1 house for 40 whatever years it was until she passed away. She lived in that 1 house.
Yeah.
My grandma lived in 1 house. My cousin, 1 house. My aunt,
Oh,
1
yeah.
house. And here I am, the weirdo.
I like being the widow with the family though. I've
Yeah.
I've done the same. And at times, like not even had a house or a home base. We were traveling. And
Yeah. I did
yeah.
too when I had the car and the caravan. Yeah, when I
Yeah.
became homeless, I went back to my mum's, but she wouldn't let me in the house. So
Mhm.
I had to sleep in a tent in the carport. That's all
Yeah.
I had. I bought, with the last of my money, I bought a tent
Yeah.
so I could sleep. Otherwise, it was I either sleep in a tent in the carport at my mum's house, or I sleep in a tent in a park.
Yeah.
And I thought, mum's car park looks like a
That's a
carport
bit
looks like a
safer.
much better option.
Yep. Yeah.
But it does. It really kind of messes you up. But then that whole mindset stops you taking action. And especially
Absolutely.
with, I mean, you're in your 40s or just turned 40. I'm like mid to late 40s. And The Secret came out. And the whole thing about The Secret was, they even show it. You can sit on the couch and press a button and you will magically materialize in a car.
Mm.
You don't have to do anything. Just
Mm.
think it and it will
Yeah.
magically appear. And they miss this fundamental part. So
Mhm.
my learning was really around the visualizations and the
Yeah.
vision boards, and just stand there and stare at it and say your mantras, and everything will magically change.
Yeah.
But nothing magically changed.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you bring in the action, and I'd love to know, what resistance did you have to taking the action?
Like within myself or from
Yeah,
others.
no.
Yep.
Well, both actually.
Yeah.
What in the outside world, especially when you started earning money, but also what inside, what resistance did you have to get past?
So internally there was a lot.
Yeah.
Because where I was living at the time, I was also surrounded by a lot of single mothers
Mm-hmm.
who didn't want me to succeed, who were like,
No, that challenges their victim. Oh, we
exactly,
love being a victim, single mums.
absolutely. Oh my gosh. And because of how much you can get on welfare, like Centrelink here,
Yeah.
they were like, just sit on Centrelink, like you'll get
Yeah.
extra because your eldest, your kids have speech issues. And well, it turns out autism and ADHD, it wasn't just speech issues. But they
And you
were
had
like,
multiple kids.
yeah, so I had two at the time. I've got 4 now.
Yeah. But even
Um,
2 kids, well, that means you get
yeah.
double the pay.
This is it. This is like, they're like, if you just get like find someone else later and have more kids. And I'm like, what?
I
That's your
knew
life
someone
plan?
that did. I knew someone
I
that
know
did
a few.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
That's
I
what
know
they
a few
did
people.
when
Yeah.
their daughter got to 12 and the money
Yeah.
started to dry out, because back
Yeah.
then it went to 16. It only goes to 6 now. But
Yeah.
back then it went to 16. She popped out 3 more kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That
Oh,
was her
yeah.
life plan.
And because like back then too, like so mine are 14 and 15 now. Back then, when they were being born, there was the baby bonuses. I
Oh,
don't know if you
yes.
remember. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was like
Yes.
3,000 and then 5,000 or something for like
Yeah.
having your baby, as well as like, the family tax benefit and
And all the parents that bought their big screen
registered.
TVs.
Oh, yeah. Like this is it. And so they were like, so when I was leaving him, it was a couple of years after that. So I think it was sitting at like 5,000. So like you could just have another baby and like you get that money. And I'm like, you have to, that baby's for life. Like you have to pay for that baby forever. Like we're not pay for, but like, like look after them and support them and provide them with stuff. And it's like, I've already got 2 that need speech therapy and psychology and everything multiple times a week that costs more than my rent. 5 grand is nothing. Like that's not going to cover anything. But anyways, like I had all that sort of resistance. I had people within the church because I was still a member at the time, like pushing me to get back with my ex. And it was like, assault with a deadly weapon. Like, this isn't a joke. Like, no, there was a lot in that marriage, like so much that just no. And so I didn't have support there. I didn't have support like with the friends I thought I had. I didn't actually let my family know a lot of what was going on because they were in another state and I didn't want them worrying too much, but they found out more later. But like, yeah, their solution, well, my parents' solution was kind of like, well, I'll get a government job or something like that. And I'm like, my kids' needs means that I can't. So yeah, I had a lot of that sort of stuff around me. And even now, like my parents at times have been like, just get a government job. Like, I'm like, I went from homeless single mom to multiple international award-winning CEO. I think I'm okay without a government job. Just saying. But you know, that whole mentality of one house, one job, like this sort of stuff, very much there.
And if you have a government job,
tick for life.
Tick for life.
Right?
My mum was a school teacher, and my
Oh my
dad,
gosh.
interestingly enough, my dad used to work for Weller, and he got retrenched in the 80s, you know, when everyone was getting retrenched that was over the age of 40. He got retrenched and ended up working at Centrelink with my stepmom. And then my sister ended up working in Centrelink. And so all my family, my mum's a teacher, and my dad and my sister and my stepmom are all in Centrelink, and I'm going to Centrelink for benefits. So my dad was my job provider person.
Oh my gosh.
So this is I feel like I just don't belong anywhere in this family, that this is my reality and this is their reality.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my brother was working for ATO, one of my older sisters for health, my other sister for something in the ACT government. Dad was at Veteran Affairs at that point, but he, back in the day when it was called Social Security, worked for Centrelink. And that's it. So like everybody I was surrounded with, and then like their partners are all in government jobs as well. Like my dad has helped heaps of people get a government job. And so, I was surrounded by that, and I just knew it wasn't the way. But fortunately, whilst being surrounded with that, I've got uncles who are entrepreneurs and have done quite well. So I did have like that sort of as an example in the background. But internally, I had to battle I should be at home with my kids all the time. I can't believe I'm divorced, like being divorced at like 27, 28. Especially within that church. I didn't believe the church either, and like kind of hadn't my whole life. So I was battling with that. And I had been reading different stuff for a few years and researching this and really deciding whether to stay in the church or not, because I didn't believe in it. And ultimately, when I divorced, I left the church as well. But that had been a decision that I'd been making well before the divorce. So I kind of had like everything stripping away at the same time, and this whole internal battle of wanting to please my family but knowing it doesn't suit me. And then it's like, if I'm not that, who am I? What am I supposed to do, and how can I do that without the only support I've really known of like my church community, my family, that sort of thing. So it was quite a vicious battle, I feel, and one I struggled with significantly. And I've definitely had moments even since then, like in the last decade and that, where I've struggled with my mental health and that, because of that internal battle between wanting to please them and what I've grown up with versus what I know to be true to me. And when I've lived true to myself, I thrive. Like it's phenomenal. And I'm so glad that my kids have seen that, and they are very confident in living true to themselves, and have made some big decisions for 14 and 15-year-olds at times that I never would have been able to do those sort of decisions at their age and follow through with it, or have the confidence to do what they're doing. And so I think, just managing to finally work through that has obviously helped, but it is still a little bit of a battle at times, even now, despite all the work that I've done. I do recommend therapy at times, but you've got to get a really good therapist. And I've seen heaps. And I got to say, I only really found one in all this time, like in my whole life, that was really good. And so that I think can be difficult, but like, or even just like a mentor or something, somebody to, I guess, work through a lot of the, I guess, like exercises and techniques and all that sort of stuff from a slightly different perspective to help you, because we get very in our own heads a lot of the time, and that can spiral fairly quickly. And so having somebody be able to pluck little things out and go, well, what about this or whatever, or help you sort of like reframe things, can be really beneficial. And I think that helped a lot. But it was definitely difficult, that particularly at that time, because I was losing everything at the same time, but knowing I was making the right choices. Like deep down, I knew I was making the right choices despite all the resistance around me, and despite my conditioning in that. I think because even as a little kid, I had felt that wasn't the path for me. And I had never really planned that path, but I kind of feel like I was forced down that path. And like, I'm very happy with my life. I love my kids, and where things are at now. But definitely at that point in time, yeah, it was a struggle. But I looked back and I was like, well, as a kid, I always wanted to travel and I wanted that freedom. And even if I had kids, I wanted to travel. Mind you, as a kid, I wanted like a billion children. I had 11 imaginary ones. So obviously, motherhood was definitely something like within my core that I wanted.
Mm.
But yeah, I would freak out if those 11 imaginary children didn't have their seatbelts on and everything. But yeah, I guess when I was really struggling, I went right back to childhood because I'd read something once about what our interests are and stuff when we're kids is like true. Like that's when you're your most authentic self because you haven't had all this other conditioning and you don't have other people I guess pushing upon you that you should do whatever. And so when I was looking back to that time, it was like I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to live on an island. I wanted to have freedom and travel and sail and whatever else. And yeah, I kind of focused on that. And I'm like, well, that was what little me wanted. And big me still does. I just have to push against all this other conditioning to get that. And interestingly enough, we now have property in Vanuatu. I'm going there next week. So I do part-time get to live on an island, and I live on the beach here in Australia, which is technically a very big island.
Technically.
Technically, like it's a real stretch saying that because it's a huge island. But yeah, and I make a living predominantly from writing, and I've got 4 kids, and yeah, I am where I'm very, very happy with where I'm at now. But yeah, it definitely took a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
What did you do to move past that resistance? Like what specifics did you do when you sat down to write or when you sat down to create something, when you sat down to take that action and you felt that part of you going, why?
I focused on my kids predominantly and the life I wanted for them. And so I had a very strong visual of the life I wanted. They were very on board with that as well. And so I had like a vision board up. I had my goals written in permanent marker on my mirror, like my wardrobe and my mirror, and that I would repeat them every day when I was getting ready. They were right in front of me. I had affirmations and quotes and mantras and that I would write in permanent marker on the bathroom mirror. So every time I was going in and out, it would be like a bit of a reminder. And I changed them all the time based on my mood and based on like if I saw one I thought that's great, I'd put it up there. Sometimes it didn't always make sense. And sometimes I don't think they were for me because sometimes I'd have visitors and they were like, that's such a good quote. And I had thought when I was writing it on there, this is so dumb. But I felt really strongly I need to write it up. And then clearly, once they'd seen it, I was like, cool, I'm going to change that one now because that wasn't meant for me. But those sorts of things, I had a few quotes that like when I was really struggling, like if there's many times I was like crying on the bathroom floor, for example, or in the shower, in the hopes that my kids wouldn't hear me. But, well, it echoes in there. So of course they heard me. But one of them was, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become by Carl Jung. And that sort of helped me break through the, all of it because why am I doing this? Well, because I don't want what has happened to me to be my story. I don't want that to be my life. And I don't want all of that. And I don't want that for my kids. And I really didn't want my kids growing up with the same expectations that I had or feeling like they had to do something because I wanted them to or I expected it from them. And so the best way to do that is to lead by example.
Yeah.
And so I had to change my life so that they could have the confidence to live their life. So very strongly feel that I would have struggled a whole lot more without my kids. They have definitely been my driving why in pretty much everything I've done. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I know for some people, sometimes I struggle with having kids because there's that constant guilt of I need to work.
Yes.
And yet I have a play with me, 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 play with me. It's like on repeat, play with me, play with me. I'm like, I can't. I have to work. So it's interesting that your kids are your motivator. Because for some of us, it is hard, especially homeschooling. I mean, when you have your kids at home, at least you have 2, so they can kind of entertain each other.
Yeah.
But when you've got one and they don't have that buffer, it's really lonely. It's a really lonely existence being a homeschool kid as a single
Yeah.
kid.
Oh yeah.
How did you, especially when you were homeschooling, did you ever have that parenting guilt of, I don't want to work, but you need to work, whether it's 5 hours a day or 20 hours a day?
Yeah.
You still
Oh
need to
yeah.
take that time away from your kids.
I've definitely struggled with that. I especially the last couple of years actually when I've had two more kids. So they're 1 and 2 years old. Um, and they need you constantly. Like at that
Yeah.
age, you don't have the choice. So I definitely struggled with that. I struggled with how to spend my time and what to do. And that I did notice with my older two that when we did everything, like we had Friday Family Fun Night was one of our big things where we do stuff together. When I was doing that consistently, when we were having dinner as a family consistently, and when we'd have dinner, we do a thing called Grateful, where we say 3 things that we're grateful for that day. And we give each other compliments in that, like something that we've noticed each other doing well or whatever. Like it all has to be genuine too. Like don't sit at my dinner table and be like, yeah, you did real good. Like you have to mean what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so I think that sort of connection. But I definitely struggled with it. And at times was just straight out with him. I was like, look, I know you really want me to play, but I have a deadline. Like I have to do this work. Once that work is done, then I can. But I found with doing the other stuff and making sure that they had quality one-on-one time with me, that made those times so much easier where they would they'd be okay with it. Like they understood from quite a young age. I was also quite open about our finances and our situation, and they also knew well, they didn't want any contact with their father, and they knew that that was going through court. They were scared of him for obviously like given what the past, and they knew that if I didn't work, I couldn't pay for court, and the risk there was so high for all of us. Obviously, I didn't put like all of it on them. Like I didn't let them know everything, but there was like they were aware. Like you can't go through that sort of thing without your kids being aware something's going on, particularly when like child protection is interviewing them and a children's lawyer is interviewing them and all that sort of stuff. Like they know stuff's going on. Sometimes I just had to sit with the guilt, and like it's just there and it makes you feel like crap. And there were nights where I didn't sleep at times. I think one of the best things that I did was stay away from alcohol during those periods of time. And I see it as kind of like a joke all the time on social media. It's like, oh, mommy needs a wine, or like, I'm just going to have
It's endless, isn't
lunchtime
it?
wines. Yeah. And then when my kids were actually at school for a while, that was the thing. The mums were like, oh, do you want to come to lunch? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll come to lunch. No, it was a boozy lunch. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I don't know, thank you. Like, aren't we all going to pick up our kids in a couple of hours? And then I found out that most of their coffee mugs and stuff all had wine in them, even
And
at
they're
3 o'clock in the
driving.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Yep.
driving. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm
I knew
just like,
someone who would go and she'd have a boozy lunch and then she'd go and pick up her kids. And I'm like, but aren't
yeah,
you over the limit?
exactly.
Yep. And it's like, are you
Wait.
kidding me?
Yep. Yep. Some of these lived close enough to the school so they'd walk, and they're like, see, it's not a problem. And I'm like, you're missing the
While you're
point here
doing
of
this
what the
down the
problem is.
road.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah, your kid in like year 2 might think it's fun that mom's dancing, but like they're gonna work out what's going on when they're a bit older. And also too, like there are times in my life where I have I have had alcohol and that sort of thing, but I always feel awful the next day. Like I didn't like, and I noticed that that impacted my parenting. Like I was not as good or as patient with them. I also didn't achieve my work as quickly, and that sort of thing. And so like sort of, staying away from that and those sorts of things helped a lot. But yeah, making sure that there was quality time. Oh, and one big thing that I did with my kids was private conversations, in that if anybody needed a private conversation or a private one-on-one with me, they could request it. And so they just come up and be like, oh, mum, I need to talk to you about something. And the other child would just be like, okay, and they go off to their room and give us the space. And that was really important because they could say that and I'm like, okay, I'll be finished in 20 minutes and then we can have that private conversation. Sometimes I had the capacity to stop what I was doing right away and do it. But I found that's something that they've commented on even now as teenagers. Like we are really close. They talk to me about anything, stuff that they're friends would never talk to their parents about.
Yeah.
And sort of implementing a lot of those little things didn't take a lot of my time, but it established a connection that reduced the parental guilt, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, they knew they had me 100%. I knew that they would get what they needed and that sort of thing. But it took a couple of years before I actually realized how close we were and that they were in quite a good space and that I can drop that guilt. But yeah, but it's definitely a difficult one. I see a lot of people struggling with the parental guilt, mainly mothers, but I do see a few fathers who work like crazy hours and rarely get to see their kids, and they feel really bad about it. But especially with the cost of living at the moment, a lot of them don't feel they have any choice.
Yeah, which is crazy because then, as you know, reading the books that you read,
Yeah,
you don't necessarily have to work
no,
15 to 20-hour days. You could actually create something
yeah,
and work, but you have to deal with your money. You have to deal with your money story. You have to deal with your money trauma. You cannot earn money working
yeah.
online while holding on to all your money trauma, because it keeps getting in the way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I can see very definitively throughout my life when I have been stressed out about money, it goes. Psh. And when I'm in a very positive mindset, it's just so much easier. Like one example was hilariously yesterday, I got sent a bill that was about double what I was expecting. And my first thought was like, oh, how am I going to pay for this? Not that like I don't have the money for it, but it was just like, oh, you know,
You don't want to pay for it.
no,
It's
no,
not,
this is
how
it.
can
And
I pay for it? I don't want to pay for
I don't
this.
want to pay for it. And but like, and also too, like I guess immediately when I get like a larger bill or something that comes up that needs to be paid for, I never look at the money that I have for it. I go, oh, I've got to, like, that has to come from somewhere, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked down and there was like a $10 note on the ground right in front of me. And I've sort of gone, oh yeah, that's right. Like, just don't worry about it. Like, you know, I've got my budget, money flows when I am, yeah, in the right headspace, and that I don't have to work hours. And then, yeah, like last night, within 2 emails, like that bit was done from other work very quickly. And that was the thing. Like, and I was talking to somebody else, and they immediately, because they got they're in a similar bill cycle, and their immediate thought was, oh, I'm not going to get overtime for 2 weeks, and then so I'll just ask to postpone it, type thing. And I thought, that's so interesting that they, like, that's never really been my immediate thought, is that I've got to work X amount of hours or I've got to do overtime or whatever. It's just like, well, you know, there's multiple ways to make money. There's multiple ways for money to come in. It doesn't necessarily have to be me working for it. Like, it can come in so many different ways, which I've had my whole life. And it is so much easier, I feel, to view it from that perspective. But you definitely have to do the work to get to that space. Like, it's, yeah, not easy. Like, if you're brought up very conditioned that, you know, you're worth X amount because you do this job, you know, so your wage per hour is this much or your annual wage is that, and that's it, you know, along with the one house for life and one job for life and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, breaking out of that, it can be near impossible. But yeah, just when I saw the $10 on the ground, I was just like, of course. And I looked around and there's like nobody around either. But yeah, and I told my kids, like, as soon as I got back to the car, because they were waiting at the car for me, I'm like, you won't believe what just happened. And they're like, oh yeah, duh. And I'm like, I'm glad you're not growing up with the same morning story I had. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the motivation, isn't it? That you don't want your kids to grow up with that same,
Absolutely.
with the same stories, with the same trauma. I talk to
Yeah.
my daughter a lot about it. We talk about money. We also, because at the moment I'm in a position where I'm really focused on what we need and what is essential, and really being aware of, well, what do I actually need?
Yeah.
Because this money could be better spent somewhere else. This money could be invested in property instead of buying more clothes, or this money could be invested in gold and silver instead of buying another, I don't know, another pair of shoes. Or so my focus at the moment is kind of being pulled to, well, instead of buying this stuff that just fills up your house, what can you use your money for that's going to create financial independence in 10 or 15, 20 years time?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm teaching my daughter with her money. She walks around the house, and if she finds money, including in my wallet, then it's hers.
Nice.
So
Nice.
she has this stash of cash, and she keeps saying, I want to buy this toy. And I go, you could buy that toy, honey, but it's going to end up like the rest of your toys, in a box after a couple of days, because it's a
Absolutely.
flashy light.
Yeah.
And why don't you
Which they
hold
love.
on to the money? Because, and she's 8 now, I said, when you turn 16, you're going to want to buy a car.
Yes.
So how about, and I get this doesn't make sense to all of you right now, but there are parts inside of you that this makes sense to. How about you start stashing away this money, so when you turn 16, you have enough to buy a car, as opposed to spending every cent that you have right now and getting to 16 and going, I want a car. I don't have any money.
Yep.
And thankfully, I don't know how this happened, because I was very much a instant gratification, buy everything now, but somehow I have managed to not dump that on her. And she lives in this world where we've had these conversations where I'll say to her, honey, so if I put down 5 lollipops and said, you can have all 5 in an hour, or you can have 1 now, which one are you going to do? And she'll go, oh, I'm waiting for an hour, of course. And it's like, oh, I've done a good job. My kid doesn't have that instant gratification. I need it now. And I think that actually comes because when she was younger, the toys that she wanted, I would buy from a company online, and they came direct from China, and they would take 6 to 8 weeks to come.
Yeah.
And so we'd get online, and she'd have a look, and then she'd pick the one that she wanted, and then she would have to wait. But then when the toy came, I would say to her, was it worth the wait?
Yeah.
Because instead of buying, we could buy 3 online or buy 1 at the shops.
Yes. Yeah, we did that a lot too.
Yeah, and that really teaches them
so
much of, was it worth the wait to get the 3 toys, or would it have been better just to get the 1? And she go, no, it was worth the wait, because now I have 3 toys.
That's it.
And it's such a great way to teach them that that
And
waiting and money game stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like with that too, like we've often done, I'm like, all right, well, if you wait a bit, I know this will go on sale, or it'll be a better price at these times, or like, if we buy that online, I'll get cash back, or, whatever. So then you can save some as well. And yeah, being very open about that sort of stuff, I definitely think helps kids with their money story and seeing what they want and that sort of thing from a young age. Because I do think it's very easy to get caught into that instant gratification. Like I know I was for quite a while. And like when I was younger. And yeah, it's so much easier when you kind of have a bit of control, and you know what you actually want and what you're doing with your money and why you're doing those things with your money. And I think that's one of the things that we've always done in our home too, is that we've always had a goal that we're working towards. And this is why we're doing this with our money. And they've always been given opportunities to earn money in different ways or have money come in. So it's, they have done jobs as well. Like my 14-year-old wanted to go get a real job. So they worked at a butcher's for a while and they loved it. But they also loved that when you're doing your own thing, you can make more for less effort.
And you're not paying somebody else to get rich.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also like that they've because they've done this sort of thing, they negotiate really well as well, which I was taught to just be self-sacrificing and accept what you get and be grateful and all that sort of stuff. And I do teach them to be kind and to be grateful and all of that as well. But it was interesting, they were doing yard work for my sister, and there was one bit that was a lot more work than they anticipated. And so they came back inside and they're like, honey, we've evaluated it. And this was my 14-year-old. And it was just like, this needs this and this and this. I think we should get X amount more. And my sister sort of stopped and looked and was like, all right, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, you can. And she came back inside and she's like, I am so impressed. She's like, so impressed that your kids would look at it and go, no, this is worth more. She goes, because us, like at that age, would have just done it for the lesser amount. And my teachers went,
and you would have done it for $2.
Exactly. For basically, although I did so much of that stuff for nothing because it was just expected.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine are like, no. I either want to spend my time doing this, or if I'm going to spend my time doing that, it needs to be worth my time, sort of thing. And they've also been learning like different ways online to make sort of more passive income and that sort of thing. But yeah, it is interesting to see that in your kids, and to see that, like, yes, I've done well here. And like, yes, they're not going down, some of the paths that I was hoping they wouldn't go down, and that sort of thing. So
I'd be really interested to ask, did you raise your kids doing chores and getting pocket money, or did you raise your kids with the concept of, no, you participate in the house?
Yeah.
This is our home. We are an equal. This isn't my home. This is our home. And therefore we all equally participate. You get a little bit more as you get older and older and older, and then money comes in other ways.
Yeah, the second one. I was raised being paid pocket money for chores. Each chore was assigned an amount, but then as my older siblings got older, they didn't want to do as much, or they'd pay me to do their chore and that sort of thing. And I'm like, this is a sucky system. Also, you don't get paid to do that stuff when you're an adult. Like, I moved out at 17. And also, like, when my mum was dying from cancer and that as a teenager, I ended up having to do so much in the house, and I felt so ripped off. And so with my own kids, I was like, we all live here. As soon as they started showing interest in any chores, I was happy for them to do it. Also, if kids can operate an iPad, they can turn on the dishwasher and washing machine and that sort of thing. Like, it's not that hard.
My daughter doesn't like doing chores.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she walks around and goes, Mom, your system sucks.
Oh,
yeah, it does. But this is the system, because I live here and I only have two hands and you make a mess.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you don't want to clean up the mess, don't make it.
Exactly.
It's really simple process.
Oh, it really is. Like, when my kids have been away.
Responsibility. Yeah. I'm not doing everything. And I have had moments where I've walked around the house having little mild meltdowns going, I cannot be responsible for everything. I am only one human being, and I'm responsible for cats and dogs and chickens and just so much. And I just sit there and I go, I can't. I'm completely overwhelmed. But then I also go into the emotion of, this is how I feel in this space. If I walk into a house that is an absolute shit fight, I can't function in this space. I cannot function stepping over toys all over the floor. And then also having, because we have 4 dogs and 6 cats, you can imagine how much dirt and mud. And also, I have a kid that firmly believes that the outside belongs inside.
Oh, yeah, that was my second child.
So it's very much, I cannot walk around a house where I'm crunching on dirt, and I can't vacuum because there's shit all over. So every now and then I get the broom and I just sweep. Everything goes into a pile, and I say, whatever you want to save in this pile, you need to do it right now, because this is my rubbish bin pile.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I've done similar, and I've had the meltdowns and just gone, this is not my responsibility. Like, you live here, that's your stuff, you've made that mess. Like, if you want to keep those things, you will clean them up right now, or I'm just chucking them in the bin, because I can't deal with this. This is overwhelming. It's, that sort of stuff. And fortunately, because they're very similar with that they get overwhelmed in very cluttered spaces, they're quite good about it. So I've been able to go, no, like, you need to do it. But too, like, the whole time growing, like, as they've been growing up, I'm like, I am raising you to be responsible adults, to be independent. Like I said, I remember when, probably 10 years ago, and I saw some article about people, like adults, Googling how to boil an egg or how to cook 2-minute noodles and stuff like that. And I remember sitting them down going, do you see this here? I don't want you to be this. I want you to be an adult that can cook for yourself, clean for yourself, do all those things, so that you can be independent, so that if you want to travel, you can travel. If you want to buy a house, you know what to do with your money, so you can buy a house. Like, all of that sort of stuff. I said, that's why we do it this way. That's why, this is the system that you live here. You need to clean up after yourself. We all need to help out. And besides that, like, if you guys are all making that much mess and you expect me to clean up, well, then I'm not going to have the time to dedicate to other things that you want to do. Like, it's your choice. Do you want to go, camping this weekend? Well, then the house needs to be cleaned up, because I can't do both.
Yes.
Type thing. And all those. So it's really easy. now, like now that they're teenagers. And I have so many people saying to me, like they've got teenagers, like my teenagers won't clean up, my teenagers won't go outside and play, my teenagers are just awful. Like I remember joking that 14-year-old girls should be shipped off to a separate island. And my kids now, I'm like, I can't imagine. Like we have such a good relationship. Like we spent the whole day together, like shopping and stuff, because that's what they wanted to do. And which is rare. We do that like once every school holidays type thing. But it's just like I can't relate to the people that are like, my teenagers don't do anything. My teenagers have so much attitude and all that sort of stuff, because I just don't have that. And I think a lot of that is because of how I've raised them and being open with them and them seeing everything about what we're doing in that. And very much like I've seen the attitude, they wanted to try the like we get paid for chores thing. So I've gone, all right, fine, we'll do that briefly. We'll give it a go.
It didn't work. It doesn't work.
No.
They still don't do them.
They still don't know.
They still don't do them.
But the other thing is too, they started looking at everything going, you're going to pay me to do that? You're going to pay me to do that? And I'm like, do you hear yourself? I'm going, that's fine. Okay. All right. So we did that for a bit. And then every time they wanted me to do something, I'm like, yeah, it's this much. What? But you're, and I'm like, no. You wanted to change the system. So if that's the system you want to works, it goes both ways. So the system the other way went both ways. So this system goes both ways too. And they're like, oh, but like, no. I'm like, your choice, pick which system. We went back to the system I had.
I have been known to say to my daughter a few times, because I'm obviously not pushing her to get a job. And I have said to her, and she said, I don't want to do this when I'm older. And I said, okay, honey, well, you need to make sure that as you are growing up, you stay in tune with yourself. You stay in tune with Mother Gaia. You make sure that every action you take is one that you want to take. And you make sure that you earn money based on what you want to do. And you understand that it can come from many different sources on a continuous basis. So you can hire people to do all this stuff for you. Then you are giving to other people, and then that is supporting them. But you need to make sure you're set up to do that. Because I was raised very much to be dependent on my mom. My mom was my cash cow. And when the Bank of Mum shut down, that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
Because when your parents die, there is no more Bank of Mum. It doesn't exist. And so I say this to her often. I say, honey, look, I was raised to rely on my mum for money. Therefore, not having her, and if I ever have to rely on Centrelink, it's not my reality. I don't want that to be my reality. So I don't want you to have that reality. I do not want you to be a victim to money. I want you to understand that there is a lot of power in money, and that it is a requirement. Because that was a really interesting thing with my upbringing, is that there's a voice inside of my head that said, that I know a lot of, especially spiritual people have. They say, oh, we don't need money. We can just sit and and we'll barter, and we'll be in a community, and this was me. And so all of a sudden there is this mindset that said money's not important. It's not relevant. It doesn't matter. Like we don't really need it. We can survive without it. It's like, no. For all the people that are surviving without it. And I know this guy over in the US who survives without money, but he also lives in other people's houses, but he doesn't pay for anything. He barters time, which is great, but realistically, he's a bit of a scavenger. Because he's not making any money, and he prides himself on going from property to property to property to property and living in other people's caravans. And it's like, yes, but that person had to have money to buy that house. So really, you're not living based on no money. You're living based on other people's money. But that's not an empowering thing to do.
No, you are completely reliant on others.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've discussed this too at length, and how, same sort of thing. It's like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, well, make sure that you've got, a few income streams, make sure that you are doing what you want to do, and you're living the life according to yourself, and that, you have invested money so that there will always be money, and
you take action.
Absolutely. And like at this age, I'm like, at your age, if you start like investing now and, you know, making your plans now, you'll be so far ahead that you pretty much at any point in your life can go, I don't want to work for a while, I want to travel, because you'll have things in place. And yeah, like I'm never like, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that, with a bit of money. Like we just have discussions about what they could do and different ways that they can earn money and that sort of thing. And then, yeah, it is very much their choice. So when we moved, so my second child had been working at the butcher's for a while, which was their choice, and they wanted to, and they did the hours that they wanted to do and all of that. When we moved, they're like, oh, I don't think I really want to. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And yeah, they played around with a few different things, and they're like, actually, I prefer what I'm doing over here, and I make more money doing this, and you know, that sort of stuff. I'm like, fully support your choices. Like and I think that's another big part of it, is that when you feel you are supported, you are more confident to take risks and to follow what you feel is right. Whereas when you feel completely alone, it is so hard because you're pushing up that hill on your own. And yeah, I can see in them how much easier it is for them to make big decisions, how much easier it is for them to invest or save for particular things that they want, say no to doing work they don't want to do, and that sort of thing, versus yeah, what I felt, I guess, growing up, and even as an adult, like even when I was leaving their father and stuff like that, I felt like I had to do everything possible to bring money in some way, because I was so like anxious and stressed out and scared about it. And I'm like, I just never want them to be in that position. And yeah, I feel pretty confident that they won't be, because of all those discussions. And yeah, but one of the biggest things is we always bring it back when they're questioning one of their decisions or something. I'm like, how does it make you feel?
Yes.
Like, how do you feel about that? Like my 14-year-old recently had a huge decision to make. And I was just thinking, oh, I don't envy you, and I can't make this decision for you. And we discussed a few things, and then they made their decision. And I said, how do you feel? And they're like, relief. They said, so much relief. I feel so light. They're like, I didn't realize I had been hanging on to this in this way. And total change in them since they've made that decision and followed that decision that is very right for them, despite getting some resistance from other places and other people. They know for sure within themselves they made the right choice. And they actually turned around and was like, well, if you're going to be that way, I'll do you need me to block you, because this is not okay, type thing, with the people that were against their choices. And I'm like, I am so impressed. I said, like, I just even now struggle to do that, struggle to turn around and be like, well, if you're, going to be so negative about my life, you don't need to be in it. Whereas for them, it was just like, no, that doesn't align with all of it. So you're out. Like, wow.
It's
so
amazing when you teach them those skills. Yeah. And my daughter's amazing at that, because when she was little and she was only 3 or 4, and we were meeting people. And at that age, a lot of the kids that she obviously has never been to school, and a lot of the kids that we would meet had been to daycare. So they picked up all sorts of delicious behavior at daycare.
Oh, yeah.
And then they would bring it to the park, and then they would like hit her or be mean to her or tease her. And my way of dealing with that was to say, okay, well, one, what they say isn't true, but you do get to choose whether you believe it or not. So do you want to believe that that is true? And she go, no. So great, then don't believe it. It's not true. You get to choose what you believe about you. Just because somebody says it does not mean it's true.
Exactly.
And then the other thing I taught her was, there are 7 billion people in this world. You get to choose whether you want to spend time with that person or not. Yeah. And so now she doesn't have very many friends, but the ones that she has, she's got maybe 4 friends. They are gorgeous human beings. They are so kind. And we met a kid a couple of months ago, and he was a bit of an asshole to her. But she was because we've moved away from the friends that she has. So we do go down to see them, but we don't see them very often. So she's desperate for friends where we are. Yeah. But I also raised her with, when we would meet people, I explained to her, so we have a choice. I can either compromise and spend time with the parents because you like the kids, or you can compromise and spend time with the kids because I like the parents, or we can wait for Mother Gaia to send us parents and kids that we both love spending time with. And she made this choice at 3. I'm sure she was about 3. She made that choice to wait. And it took 2.5 years of waiting until we met these beautiful, amazing friends. And now we're in that same position again of, well, you can have these kids as friends if you want to. And she goes, yeah, but they're just not that nice. It's like, okay, so do you want them as a friend? No. Okay, then don't have them as a friend. You don't have to have someone as a friend. But some of them, she say, yeah, but you really like the mum. It's like, yeah, I do, but that's not a reason.
No.
That's not a good enough reason to keep this person in your life if they are not nice. And as you know, we have a deal. Just because I like the mum doesn't mean I expect you to sacrifice.
Yep.
And just because you like the kid, I do not expect you to want me to sacrifice. Yep. So we keep our focus on meeting people where we both enjoy the company of the kids and the parents. Yep. And I think when you raise kids like that, they all of a sudden start to learn, I don't have to be friends with anybody. I get to choose who I be friends with.
And they feel quite empowered to, just step back and just go, I'm not accepting that behavior. Type of thing. Whereas I didn't, like growing up, I was so pushed to be friends with everybody, be nice to everybody.
That's school, isn't it?
Total people pleaser. Yep.
Yeah, that's just school
and religion. Yeah.
Be friends with everybody because they're in your class. But I don't want them at my birthday. Well, you have to because they're at your class. They're in your class.
Yeah, I hate that rule.
Yeah, so do I.
I think it's the dumbest thing ever. Also, like, kids need to learn that not everybody gets everything. Like, there are winners, there are people that are losing. Like, not everybody gets a prize, all this sort of stuff. Like, all of that I hate. And I haven't raised my kids that way. And we actually, I remember one of their birthday parties years ago, we were doing that and we played all the old school games. We decided to do, like, they wanted to do an old school party and we played all these games. And a few of the kids were like, well, where's my prize? And I'm like, there's one winner. Like, it's musical chairs. There's one person left. There's one winner. And they're like, what? And the parents were horrified. And I'm like, there's no participation ribbons in our house. I said, if they get one of them, my kids don't value it because everybody got one of them. That's not, it doesn't show that they've worked hard at this or that they, are really good at this or whatever. Like, that sort of thing. And that flows through to every aspect of your life. So, like, choosing who's in your life, choosing what you want to do, for work, how you're bringing in money, all that sort of stuff. Like, it's all linked. But I don't think most people see it. And and it's been interesting when my kids have had conversations with others about this sort of stuff. You could just see, like, their friends are going, whoa, what? And making these, especially as teenagers, like, they're like making these realizations, and their friends too going, I wish I'd been raised that way, or I wish I had been taught that. Like, that's not what I know. And they have these really deep conversations with my kids. But and I do think too, like, it does make it easier in terms of filtering people out of your life that shouldn't be in your life, which I just didn't do well. But having them go, I don't like their mom, or I don't like, this, that, or the other, or whatever, has been a good guide at times, especially when I've been feeling like kind of lost or not living true to myself. Having that sort of arrangement with my kids has actually pulled me into line a bit better than, it sounds like we parent really similar.
It's interesting though, because with those party games, my daughter never wanted them. Because she saw them she would see them I'd explain them to her because she'd see them on something, and I'd explain to them the musical chairs where one person is the one that wins, and she goes, but why? Like, why can't they just play for fun? Like, why can't we all just grab a chair and then all just run away and then all go in and grab a chair and all run away? She said, that would just be fun. And why can't we just have this musical thing where you sit in a circle and nobody gets anything, but just the unwrapping is the fun. So she was all about, why can't we just have fun? So whenever she met anyone that could compete with her, she finds it really hard. Is that if they're just running. And I remember we were in a homeschool group down on the coast, and there were a group of kids and they would all run, and she was just running because it was fun. But they were all about, you're a loser, I'm the winner, you're the loser, I'm a winner. And she would come back in tears going, I don't get it. Why can't they just run for fun? And I'm like, honey, this is just their upbringing. They had all at some point been in school, and you
Yeah.
naturally learn that win-lose dynamic in
Yeah.
school. And I never enforced it in her. I never had her
Yeah.
competing against anything, except now the competition is against herself.
Yeah.
So it's always, well, honey, if you're going to run, then run to beat yourself, not run
Yes.
to beat another person. This isn't about trying to be better than everybody else in the world. It's trying to be better than you were the last time you did this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm super keen now that you're talking about having 14 and 15-year-olds. I'm so keen to see what she's like as a teenager, because I was
Yeah.
always of the opinion I didn't want kids because I was so concerned that they would end up injecting heroin into their eyeballs at 15,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so fucked up at 15 and
Yep.
16 and 17. Like, I was a mess. So I'd
Yeah.
always intended on not having kids unless I could do it completely differently.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have. I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job. But I know that once they get to those teenage years, you really see whether you did a
Yeah.
good job when they're
Oh,
a teenager.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like I look at it and I just every day I'm proud
Yeah.
of them. And I can see that they are so confident within themselves to turn around and just go, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to dress like that. I'm not going to do that. No matter what their peers are doing or pushing them to do or whatever, it's just like, nope,
No.
nope, nope. And I never had that confidence at that age.
No, me neither.
I was like quite religious, obviously, and just scared of hell.
Mm.
Kind of thing. Like that was really pushed into me, which is the only reason why I didn't do some of the stuff I might otherwise have done. But overall, I felt this huge need to conform as much as I possibly could within the boundaries of, like, conform to everybody else, like society and all that sort of stuff, as much as I could within the boundaries of conforming to my religion at the same time, sort of thing. And it makes you an anxious mess trying to do that, and you have no confidence within yourself. Whereas, yeah, my kids are like, nope. But they're also very passionate about what they do like and what they do enjoy. And so, like, my eldest was in a robotics comp this year. My 14-year-old has just started wrestling because that's something that they wanted to do. So we're like, all right, yep, give it a go. And their club is amazing, so supportive, and so many tips. And a couple of them are like, we've got the champ for the Oceania is actually one of the coaches there, and one of the dads or something was an Olympian, and all of that. Like, but they are so supportive. It is not that full competitive, I'm better than you environment. It's just everybody going, improving each other's techniques and just having fun. Even though they do, obviously there are wrestling competitions and that sort of thing. It's such a great place for them to be involved. And it's interesting, my eldest was doing martial arts in the same location, but there was a few different types, and so they tried each one, and they decided on one on Taekwondo, because they also really connected with the others in that class, and they didn't particularly like the first one because it had a much more competitive, less cohesive vibe and that sort of thing. And I thought it's really interesting that at this age you recognize that and go, I don't want that sort of environment. I want one where we're all working together. We're all, having fun. We're all winning. We're all trying to improve ourselves. And, for those that are further along, can give advice on how to improve slightly. And, like, you might want to do your kick like this, or maybe if you practice at home like this will help, and those sorts of things, rather than just wanting to be better than each other. And it's, really interesting to see them making these choices so confidently in every area of their life at an age that normally teenagers are known for being full of attitude and clashing with their parents and, sneaking out and drinking and taking drugs and sort of stuff and lying. And and it's just so interesting to see our relationship compared to what we're seeing in different places we've lived and traveled and that sort of thing. And the perception of teenagers in general, that was my fear, was the teen years. And everybody would joke when they were younger, just wait till they're teenagers, ha ha ha. And if I'm out with just my toddlers now, people were like, oh, just wait till they're teens. And I'm like, actually, I have 2 teenagers and we're very close and I love it. And they'll go, what? I'm like, yes, I have teenagers, and that little joke doesn't apply to our family, but thanks.
Yeah, it's a horrible connotation. I feel really bad for teenagers because they're being set up to be assholes.
Yeah.
It's almost like they don't have a choice, and their
No,
parents don't know that their belief that their kids are going to be assholes
yep,
actually sets their kids up like that, because then the
absolutely.
parents go into teenagehood and they're already rigid.
Hmm.
They're already stressed. They already have
Yeah,
all of these preconceived ideas about what their kids are going to be like. They've already set up their kids to be jerks.
absolutely.
And the parents are reacting to their kids as if they are jerks as soon as they
Yeah,
become teenagers, because that's the
just
expectation. And I look at that and
absolutely.
I think, so maybe if you didn't think your
Hmm.
kid was an asshole, they might not be. Did you ever consider that you were the problem?
Absolutely.
But you cannot tell a
Absolutely.
parent that they are the problem because they don't
No,
like it very much.
no, no. Yeah. But you think about it, like in your teenage years, how much were you dismissed? How
Oh,
much was your
yeah,
opinion, your
yeah,
thoughts, and all of that invalidated and just
yes.
thrown away, not even listened to, or that's not that big a deal, or, you're overreacting. I got told all the time I was overreacting. And it's just like, no, I wasn't actually. I was having very, very valid reactions to my mum dying from cancer and being sexually assaulted and having issues at school and all that sort of stuff. Like being emotional, if I wasn't emotional through all of those things, that would have been concerning. But overall, like, yeah, it's very much that way. And when I've been asked, like, how do you have such a close relationship? I'm like, it's basic. Treat your kids like humans. Like
I
they are people
listen to
too.
them. I care about them. I
Mm-hmm.
value them. When my daughter comes
Exactly.
to me and she says, I have an idea, the words out of my mouth are, oh my God, I really want to hear it.
Exactly.
She can come to me 100 times a day, and I will
Yep.
still say at the 100th time, I really want to hear it.
Yeah.
Or she comes running out and she'll say, Mom, I want to tell you something. Tell me. I
Tell
want
me.
to know. Or
Absolutely.
she'll be making something. She said, Mom, I created something. Show me.
Exactly. Exactly. And even like in the car, for example, I will turn the radio off. Like I'll
Yeah.
switch off what I'm doing. The phone gets put away out of sight because they've shown that with the research, like even just having the phone there creates like a bit of a barrier and distraction. So like it'll be put away, whatever it is. So like it's me and you. Like show me, tell me, like all of that. But so much too of things that we enforce on kids, we wouldn't force on adults.
Yeah.
So why do we force it so hard with kids? And things like I see people battling it out over food. And it's my kid won't eat this, my kid won't eat that, blah, 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 blah. Like I never really had that issue. I just gave them options and let them eat accordingly. And interestingly enough, a lot of the stuff that one didn't particularly like, she has quite significant intolerances to. And yeah, so their stomach would get upset all the time if they were having those foods and things like that. And yeah, like there's foods that I hate. And I will gag if it's like, even if people try to hide it within other foods, I'll be like, no, I can taste it. Why do we force
Why
kids
do
to
we
do
do
that?
that to our
Taste
kids? Yeah.
taste buds change over time. And how traumatic would it be to like, well, I know how traumatic it is because I was forced to eat stuff I didn't want to eat. And, you have the tears and it's stressful for everybody versus, all right, well, we'll try something else or let's try something else. Or if they show interest in a particular random thing at the shops, I'd get it and they could try it. And just making it easier and more open. And that way, over time, they would try different things and they'd be like, if there was something that they didn't like when they were younger, more often than not, a few years later, they're like, I'll try that again. I know I didn't like it. They're volunteering that. I haven't had to force it and I'm not having 2 hours of a nightmare dinner. And same thing with bedtimes. I haven't, like, we have a routine in the sense that, it's like with the younger ones, it's they have a bath and we read a book and, try to wind down for bed. But if they're clearly not tired at 7 o'clock, I am not going to battle them to make them sleep at 7, if
Our
that makes sense.
routine was so weird when my daughter was young because
Yeah.
she's never really been a sit down kind of kid.
Yeah.
And so feeding her, well, I never had a high chair ever.
No, yeah, no.
Feeding her was on a mat on the floor,
Yeah.
and she would just like lie in the food. And
Yeah.
that was her thing until she could sit at the table. We would sit
Mm-hmm.
and eat on a mat on the floor.
Yep.
Nobody, I mean, people cared, but no one was there to care and tell me what they thought.
Mm.
But as she got older, I never did that. Let's have a bath. Let's wind down. Let's read a book.
Yep.
Let's go to bed. It was, let's run.
Yep.
And so we would play these games where we would run up and down the hallway screaming yelling. When she was really little and I could lift her, I'd put her on the doona and then I'd throw the sheet up in the air, so then she would fly up and come landing back down again. Everything that I did with her right before bed was high energy.
Yep.
And people would go, how do you get, because then she would sleep.
Yep.
And they go, how do you get her to bed so easily? How do you get her to sleep so easily? What, what's your routine? And I would tell them, and they're like, are you insane? And I go, but I'm the one with a kid that even now, unless she's like last night, she had chocolate niblets at 3:00 in the afternoon. And I said, okay, but be aware that might be a little bit hard to get to sleep. And last night, the night before, we were both asleep by 6:30. Yeah. And last night, 9:00, she's like, I can't sleep. I'm never having chocolate niblets again.
But they learn, don't they?
They learn that usually she is asleep by 7:30. We both hop into, we still co-sleep. So we both hop into bed. Music goes on. I might do a meditation for her. And she's asleep within 10 minutes.
Yep.
And that's because of the first 5 years, I believe, was not about winding her down. It was about filling her cup.
Yep.
And for her, filling her cup was running around and playing and yelling and screaming and making as much noise as possible. So that was my focus. And I really think it's made such a difference to her in just her ability to, even now, we don't sit really and eat at the table. She will sit on the table. I will sit on the table. That's the weird thing. I don't actually really like sitting at the table on a chair, but I will happily sit on the table and eat the plate on the table. So she does the same thing. And then I look at that and I think, this is why I went through so much trauma in my childhood, because my way is what I've done with my daughter, which wasn't trying to get her to go to sleep and constantly yelling at her, go to bed, go to bed, shut up, go to bed. Because they'd come out 100 times for water because they wanted. She never had to do that.
No.
And I
because what they're doing with that anyway is that they're seeking connection.
Exactly. So I would fill her cup.
Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of play, like especially like around dinner. They're often involved in doing dinner and we're playing and that sort of thing. But like having that connection is what they want.
Yes, exactly. And every kid is different. So yours, it might be the bath and the book reading. Yeah. Because that's their, like, they love that sit down, snuggle, warm, cuddly connection time. Every kid is different, but it's finding what is, and I didn't even know we were going to go down the parenting path, but I love this conversation.
I think we're doing
well. What does your kid need at the end of the day for connection so they can fall asleep feeling safe?
Yeah.
That was always my focus. And for me, it was, I could never put my daughter in a bed because I remember having horrendous dreams and waking up in the middle of the night screaming for my mum, who would then have to wake up and come into the room. Whereas now when my daughter has a bad dream, I'm just right there.
Right there. Exactly. Yeah. I've very much didn't have these options so much in my first marriage with my older two until I left.
Yeah.
But all the kids are islanders though, and it's interesting, things that are like this are so common in their culture. It's just part of it, like eating on the mat, that sort of stuff. Like it's just part of the culture, and kids are very valued, and kids actually eat before adults over there in Vanuatu as well. Like that's a big thing. But yeah, like my kids are 1 and 2, and it's so funny because I've heard arguments about this, but like with the bath and all of that, the first thing is, do you want to? Sort of thing. Obviously, if they're covered in dirt and like disgusting, then, you want them to have a bath, but they'll always say yes. If they're really like sticky or gross or whatever, they'll always say yes. But on the odd occasion that they don't want to have a bath before bed, okay. Like, okay, and like when we only sort of, I only sort of go, okay, let's go to bed, is when they indicate that they want to. Like when they indicate that they're ready. And then it's not a battle. Go in, lay down, and sometimes that means I'm actually falling asleep at the same time as them at 7 or whatever. Sometimes they'll fall asleep and I might pop back out and do some other stuff or whatever. Sometimes one will fall asleep and the other one's not ready yet, because being 1 and 2, obviously,
different
there's
age.
All of that.
Yeah,
exactly. But it works, and it's going with what I see will work for them that night.
My daughter averages a shower once a week.
Yep.
Even when she was a kid. Do you want a bath?
Yep.
No. Okay. Do you want a
Yep.
bath? No. Okay.
Yep.
But then she would also spend most of her time in summer running around under the hose.
Yeah, well, this is
Or
it.
if it
There's
was
a lot of
raining,
play.
she would get naked in the pouring rain and go and stand outside and
My
just
kids love that.
get wet. And she still does it now.
Yeah.
And we went for a walk down. So we've got a lake on our property. We went for a walk down to the lake, and she's running through the lake with the dogs, and the dogs stunk, and she stank really bad. And we came inside, and I said, "Oh, honey, can you go and make the bed?" And she said, "Not before I have a shower. I'm not." It's like, okay.
Yep.
I didn't ask her to have a shower. She said, "Look at my feet. I'm not going anywhere but the shower. Look at my feet."
Yep.
But she hasn't showered for a week, and her feet are still like they're still disgusting because we go out in the chicken coop and everything. But then if she steps in chicken poop, she go, "Mom, I stepped in chicken poop. I need to wash my foot." Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
But she's taking that role on herself.
Yeah.
I'm not that parent that says you have to have a shower. It's time to have a shower. You need to have a shower. Because it's also that constant fight. And that's the thing that I think a lot of parents battle with now, is that they are constantly fighting to make their kids do things that they want their kids to do that their kids don't want to do. And the only reason the parents want them to do it is because of their own story.
Yeah.
I remember this woman, I was in a mothering group, and this woman she was having the biggest meltdown, saying, "I don't know how to get my kids to sit at the dinner table and eat. And I don't know how to get them into a shower. And I don't know how to get them into a bath. And they're just like, they're chaos. They're horrible." And I'm like, I was that parent that said, "I don't think your kids are the ones that are being horrible in this situation. You're trying to make your kids do all of these things that they actually clearly don't want to do. How about you don't make them have a shower?
Yep.
How about you don't force them to brush their teeth? So what? They're baby teeth. They're going to fall out.
Yep.
Who cares?"
Yeah.
And she came back and said, "No, these are the rules of our house." And it's like, well, if they're the rules, enjoy the fight.
This is it. And
because that's what you're getting.
Yep. And I look at like my 14 and 15-year-old, well, almost 16 actually, and I just think, for me, that's the proof that the way I parented was right. Exactly. And very much about listening to them and their needs and what they want. And like even now, 1 and 2, if they've touched something like and their hands are all gross, like once they're done, they'll be like, "Hands," and like they want to wash their hands. Like, they
do that themselves because they're smart.
Exactly.
They're not these dumb, stupid little things that don't have intelligence. They
know how they feel.
They know how they feel.
Exactly. And so even like with toilet training, for example, I know people that have been so stressed out and so forceful and all this sort of stuff with it. And I'm like, well, the things that I noticed was using like cloth nappies made them aware of what their body was doing, it seemed, sooner than those in disposables, because disposables is designed to, whisk that wet feeling away straight away. And it wasn't difficult. Like training my kids, because they were aware of everything. They knew what they wanted. They'd ask to go to the toilet and that sort of stuff. And I remember night times too, like my kids have never wet the bed. And people are like, "But how? Like that's been since 2 years old." And I'm like, well, they just
smart.
Didn't, because they're aware of, they feel it, like they know they've got that association with it.
Well, for me, it was sitting my daughter. So she was in cloth nappies, but I also I didn't know it at the time, but it's called elimination communication, where you don't have a nappy on them at all. And when you know something's coming, you hold them over a bowl or you hold them over something. That's what I did. But I did that just purely out of survival, because I couldn't afford cloth nappies and I was never going to put my kid in plastic nappies. So I had, for the 18 months that it took for Bailey to be out of nappies, I had 5 cloth nappies. That's all I had. Yeah. So I had to figure out, how do I survive with 5 cloth nappies? When everybody else around me had like 25 to 35 cloth nappies, and they had their kids in them all day, every day and all night. And they'd be like, "How are you doing this on 5?" And it's like, it's survival. I have to. If she's outside, she doesn't have a nappy on. If she
that's what we
wheezes, who cares? I had floorboards.
And they become very aware of it.
And even inside, when she was running around playing, because we didn't have carpet, she didn't wear a nappy. And what
It's so
ended
easy
up
to clean
happening
up.
was, and I had 2 or 3 potties that were around the place. So when I knew
Mm.
she was going, I would put her on the potty.
Yeah.
And then one day she'd only just started walking, and she walked when she needed to go to the toilet. She walked herself to the potty and sat on it. She was just over 1 because she started walking about 12 months.
Yep.
She just turned 1, I think, and she sat on the potty and went.
Yeah.
And I'm like, winning. But then the other thing that we did, which has actually turned out to be not a good thing, was that every time I went to the toilet, I would sit her on a potty.
Yeah.
And I know parents that won't do that because they go, oh, that's gross. Why would you do that? Why would you have your kid in the toilet with you? I'm like, well, one, I'm a single mum. I don't have a
Yeah, I
choice.
was
I'm
going to
not
say,
going
as
to
a single mum,
leave.
that wasn't a choice. They had
I'm
to
not
come
going
in.
to leave my
Yeah.
child out, like a 2-year-old out in the lounge room on
No.
her own. Like, have you got mad?
2 minutes equals a lot of distraction, like a lot.
So my
Yeah.
solution was stick her on a potty. So then she learned to go at the same time I did. I mean, this is when she was really young and she could hold, but even when she couldn't hold herself up, I would lean forward and hold her on the potty. And she would learn to go herself. But what that means now is that if I say I need to go to the toilet, so does she. Every single time. So now I have to be aware that if I know I need to go, I just say to her, honey, I need to go. So if you're going, you need to go now, because I'm about a minute away from needing to go.
Yeah.
Because and I realize this, and I'm like, oh, see, that's where sometimes your parenting backfires.
Yeah.
Because now if I need to go, she will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely had that with my older two.
Yeah.
With my younger two, I will grab the older two and be like, I have to go to the bathroom, take them. Because, like you see, like I saw with them too, a lot of the association when I said I needed to do something, they needed to, because being a single mum, you take them with you for everything. And so, I was like, I'm not going through that again. I'm changing
if
that.
I shower, she has to shower with me.
That was exactly what I had. Yes. And at first with the younger two, that was happening a bit. And as soon as I realized that the second I went towards the bathroom, they were both like, okay, let's go. I'm like, hey, older kids, please just, I just need this little bit of time so that I can shower without them. Can you just distract them? And I was able to break that sort of, association. Because it happens very quickly without you even realizing.
Yeah.
Because you have to do what you have to do to keep them safe. But you still want to have a shower. You still need to, like, everybody has to go to the bathroom. Like, these things still happen.
Yeah.
But
and it
when
seems like
it
really does seem like such a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
And it seemed like such a good idea as a single parent and homeschooling. I have one kid who struggles to entertain herself. Because when she was a baby, and I see this now, when she was a baby, I would constantly have her with me because I believed in attachment parenting. Well, guess what attachment parenting creates? It creates attached children.
Yes.
Until they are ready to go out on their own. And unfortunately, she went through a lot. She saw a lot when she was little, which, kids just should not be able to see when she was little. And so she has a lot of attachment issues. And I was also I was raised to be codependent. Yeah. So while I've been dealing with my mom passing away and unraveling that codependency, there's no way I could raise a child that wasn't codependent. It would be next to impossible.
Yeah.
But I can see the changes now, because people would say to me when she was 4 and 5, they'd say, you need to put her in daycare, because otherwise she's never going to leave your side. You need to force her to sleep in her own bed. Otherwise she will never sleep in her own bed. And I'd look at them and go, do you seriously think that I'm going to have a 20-year-old that's going to be sharing a bed with me? Like, what on what planet? She will do it, but she will do it when she's ready. Not because I have forced her to do it, not because I forced her to go through the trauma of doing it, because I have a lot of compassion for what she's been through. She will do it when she's ready. And now she will go outside in the dark to get the dogs. Yeah. We're on 140 acres. It's fucking dark out there when it's dark. Like, there's no light out there. And there are no people. She will go out at 8 and get the dogs. Or if it's late and I've forgotten to do the chickens, she will go out in dark and close up the chicken coops.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't do that 6 months ago because she didn't feel safe enough.
Exactly.
But something inside of her has evolved. that she now feels safe. But I didn't force that on her.
No, it's in their own timing.
It really
But
is.
also, like, it's funny, like the co-sleeping thing. So the way I've got the room set up is there's a bed, like a queen bed. There's a toddler Spider-Man bed because that's what he wanted. And then there's another bed for the 1-year-old. And so it's kind of like set up like that. But at the same time, if they want to be in the queen bed, they can get in the queen bed. If they want to be in the Spider-Man bed, like, it's options. Like, there's choices there. For the most part, they want their own beds, but me in the room. And so I'll be right there. And that's fine. But I find it interesting when adults are so like, but like, they'll never be able to sleep alone and blah, blah, blah. Okay. How many adults are also not sleeping alone? Like, most
How many adults are in relationships because they're scared of being alone, because they were forced into a cot when they were a month old to create that independence? It didn't work.
This is it. Like, it always amuses me so much when people are like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, my older two are pretty confident, and I let them whenever they needed to, at whatever age, they were allowed to get back in bed with me or whatever. Like, it was led by them. But I had so many people going, you can't do that, da 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 da. And they initially had their own rooms, but then when we went through the divorce and there was a lot of trauma and that sort of stuff, I was like, yep, whatever you guys need, like, it's your option. And so they each had their own room set up as well when we got our own place and all of that. But if they wanted to get into my bed, they could get into my bed. If they both wanted to sleep in one of their beds together, they could do that. Like, it was what they felt they needed for that night. And as adults, isn't that what we do? We go to bed when we want to go to bed. We eat when we want to eat. If we're in a relationship, sometimes, like, you're in there and you're super close, and other times you might be on the edge of the bed together, or, one of you might be away, or like whatever. Like, there's so many variables, but as an adult, you have that choice and you make those choices.
Why can't they do that as kids?
This is it. And the emotional stability that they get and emotional regulation and that sort of thing, it's just so much better for them when they have their own choice.
Exactly.
So obviously, you want to keep your kids safe. And I'm not saying, like, let them make choices in everything and, let them, really severe danger or anything. Like, obviously, be smart about things. But overall, 99% of the time, my kids have been given the choice to make, like, the option to make their own choices about stuff. And they typically make the safe or the choice that's right for them, and the sort of choice that I wish I could make at their age, sort of thing. Yeah. And so I'm quite content to let them do that. Yeah.
This has been such a big conversation, and
I was thinking that I'm like, it's so huge.
When we started, I thought I need to start this because otherwise we're just going to talk. And
I know we had a great pre-talk.
I need to stop this because otherwise we're just going to talk.
I just looked at the time and I was like, oh wow. Clearly we have similar thoughts and get along, and
clearly.
Hopefully everybody else is, anybody that listens to it will find similar sort of value.
This is just for you and me.
Feels like it. Does feel like we've just been sitting here chatting, which is good.
It has been really, really nice. Do you want to share your website? Do you want to share details of how people can find you?
So I've got, like, the two websites are kylietravis.com.au, is more about, like, sort of creating an abundant life, and I'm sharing more about my parenting and that there as well, which I didn't do for ages. And then in terms of, like, finance and that sort of thing, I share most of that at thethriftyissue.com.au, and it's the same on socials and everything everywhere. But yeah, those are the two main. So depending on what you're interested in from this conversation, take your pick, but they link to each other and that sort of thing too. But yeah.
And we did the first half on one and we did the second half on the other. I didn't even know that this was what we were going to do, but I love that we did.
Yeah, I think it worked very, very well. So yeah, I'm happy that it went how it did, and yeah, I've enjoyed it. So thank you.
Me too. Okay, so that was Kylie. We were just laughing at the end going, we were actually recording this for a show. It wasn't just her and I having a conversation, but it kind of felt like that. It just felt like we were having a conversation. But isn't that exactly what I wanted with these podcasts? These are organic conversations that I have with people, and they go wherever they go. And gosh, I'm so thankful that it went where it went, because even though we started with the money and we started with her journey through that. We started with her journey through being in an abusive relationship and then becoming a single parent and becoming homeless. We then ended up in this beautiful gift of parenting and how we parent in very similar ways, but also very differently. But the outcome is the same: child-led parenting and creating empowered kids who feel confident and safe in themselves. So then when they become adults, they feel confident and safe. And that is both of our focus. So it's been really interesting coming out the other side and seeing this is where this podcast ended up. So I hope you found something amazing out of that, even though it went into completely different directions. I really hope you found something amazing out of that. Make sure you do check the descriptions below, because all of our information, Kylie's information, is going to be there. And also, I'm creating a new program for panic attacks. If you get panic attacks, I'm creating a 3-step webinar. So hopefully by the time this goes up, there will be a link in the description below where you can snap up that. And yeah, if you want some coaching from me, do reach out, lovecreatesfreedom.com. Make sure you reach out to Kylie as well if you want some support, especially financially. She's amazing with her mindset and her concepts around money. So make sure you check her out. Thank you so much for listening today and watching. Please make sure you like and share and subscribe so you get all of the fantastic new interviews that are going to be coming. I think that's it. Remember, you are truly appreciated.